So if you're creating a product to sell, it's really important to realize that some of the very best products are very simple, but very complex. And one of the best examples of this is the Apple keyboard, because it's actually changing sizes underneath you. So let's go ahead and talk about this. It is 2007. The iPhone is being developed and it's just a little ways away from being released. And Steve Jobs still does not like the keyboard on it. He continuously tries to type on it and he has all of his text completely fudged to different words, and he is a little bit ticked about the situation. Chucking it as an engineer, saying, fix this, you've got 2 weeks. They try a couple of different things, he comes back, he tries it again. The touchscreen is just sort of finicky, it's not very precise, and we have fat fingers compared to the very small screens of the iPhone at this time. But it was really important that the keyboard be perfect, because if the keyboard didn't work, people would hate the iPhone, because the thing it was going to be compared against was the BlackBerry, the email device of the day, and then the iPhone, which would have been just a bad email device with a gimmicky touchscreen. So the keyboard had to work, which was why you can understand why Jobs was so intense about this. They try a couple more things, he comes back around and he's like, uses some choice words, chucks it back at him and says, one more time, get it fixed. A single engineer goes ahead and takes the iPhone back to his cubicle and he starts messing around with something. He types up some code and plays around with it and he's like, this is pretty darn close. He sends that out. He hands it back to Steve Jobs a little bit later. Steve starts typing with it, looks up at him, says, this is pretty good, what did you do? And the guy proceeds to explain. So Steve, what I did, when you're typing along, based on the letters you typed previously, you're very likely going to type some other word. If you type a T and an H, there's a really high probability that the next letter you type will be an E in order to spell the. That is a statistical probability based on all of the letters inside of the dictionary. And it's also not very heavy code to operate this statistical analysis based on what is being typed at any given moment. So what he did was he took that probability of what the next word is based on the letters that you're putting in, and then it would guess what the next letter is that you're gonna say, and would proportionately increase the touchable area of that letter. For those who aren't familiar with this, the touchable area is the actual space on the screen that if you touch it, you will actually hit that key. It is not the same as what is shown. So the E on that screen when you're typing the looks this big. It looks a little tiny fella right there. But since you typed TH, all the space that could have you hit the E is much bigger. So basically the touchable area inflated around the E so that when you're just a little bit off or so, you still hit the E, because that's probably what you were going for and not any of the other adjacent letters. If you typed TH, there's a very low chance that you're going for W or R on either side of the E. You're probably going for the E so it can take the space of those other two guys. And when you do this, now fat fingers work, because instead of having a keyboard of a few dozen keys, you actually have a keyboard effectively of only like 3 or 4 main keys. Because again, if you type TH, most of the time people are not looking for the word thwart. So they're not gonna go for the W, they're looking for the word the. They're gonna go for the E. So we put that into the keyboard and it would dynamically change its size as you're typing so that the most important key is the largest when you're typing along. But you don't see this. However, to this day, the Apple keyboard is still one of the best typing experiences out there because it's the most accurate. Mainly because Apple has likely patented this idea and you will not be able to get a hold of it for another 5 or so years when the patent runs out after 20 years from that date. But it explains how touch keyboards ever work at all, because they're just not very good if the keys were actually the same size. Other people have used other solutions to this, but this was the very first time that it was applied to a multi-touch screen. And it is one of the biggest reasons why the iPhone was so successful. But what you can learn from this as a product designer is to realize where the lines in the sand are. Some features can be let go. The iPhone could drop calls occasionally because it was so good the rest of the time. But the keyboard could not be garbage. Because if it was, the BlackBerry would have been better, even though the BlackBerry didn't have internet connectivity. It wouldn't have mattered because no one could type a URL into the iPhone if the keyboard sucked. So no one could appreciate the internet connectivity if they couldn't get there. The BlackBerry would have a better keyboard, it would have a better first touch experience, so the iPhone potentially could have failed if it didn't have this amazing little feature inside of it that almost no one is aware of. Have a great day, everybody.